and he's here to help support this presentation, answer some questions, but I think I can handle most of it. So we do have a short PowerPoint presentation here. It's really hard to see on the screen. I'll toggle through here, but the information is also in the handouts. So it's the same. So we'll start with kind of the reason why we're hosting this community forum is I mix up Trust, Truth, and Values Act. The Trust Act, which was effective January 1, 2017, made some changes to the California law with regards to anyone who is arrested or detained by law enforcement and any subsequent detainers by Immigration's Customs Enforcement. And what part of that law said is that if a subject is detained and then that person, if ICE is then given access to that person, by law we have to do a community forum the following year. Also part of that is that part of this community forum that we're required to do by law is to report on those individuals that ICE was given access to and demographic statistics. So that's what we're here to do today, to be in compliance with the Truth Act and to present that information. And that's all Assembly Bill 2792. Some additional information about the Truth Act. What it also revised is law enforcement's requirement to inform anyone who's detained and who also ICE has issued a detainer for, that we have to notify them of their rights under this act. And those rights include that whether or not we will be cooperating with Immigration Customs Enforcement, that they have a right to an attorney, that they have a right to refuse to talk to Immigration's Enforcement, and that has to be provided to them in multiple languages. So what we did in 2017, is Hermosa Beach Police Department did revise our policy to be in compliance with that. On one of the handouts, you'll see an ICE detainer checklist. That essentially is everything that we do. If we receive a detainer for any inmate or any person detained in our custody, we will go through that information with the prisoner to make sure we're in compliance with the Truth Act. All right, so we're going to move on now to, this is the statistical information on 2017, and I'll speak briefly on why we're presenting this information now and not in 2018, because the Truth Act does say that you'll do it the calendar year following all of the year's statistical data. So we had some staffing shortages, some challenges, and some turnover, and we had planned to do this in 2018, and we had some leadership we had some staffing challenges, so it got pushed back a little bit. And then another requirement of this law is when we do a community forum, we're required to give 30 days notice. So we've been trying to catch up, gave our 30 days notice, and it's been on the city website for 30 days, and now here we are today. All right, so trying to be in compliance with all of this 2017 data, we received 4 detainers during that calendar year for subjects who we had arrested. And I will talk a little bit about the first line here of a subject who was arrested June of 2017. So this particular person was arrested for vandalism and also had a stolen firearm in his possession. He was brought to the jail and he was charged for those violations and then posted bond. So by law, every person arrested for any charge can bail or bond out. So he was given his right to bail or bond out. He did so. After he was released, we received a detainer and indicated that he was wanted by Immigration Customs Enforcement. We also learned during that process that this subject had priors. He was previously arrested for attempted murder, had prior weapons charges. So when he came back 2 days later to get back the vehicle, which he was arrested in, where we found the stolen firearm, we now had this detainer in hand. So we re-detained him and held him until Immigration's Customs Enforcement arrived. The problem was, when we looked at that detainer, we misunderstood and thought it was a federal immigration arrest warrant. It wasn't. So the subject was released to ICE. That prompted us to look more thoroughly at our policy and practice and to make sure, and that was what prompted this ICE detainer checklist, to make sure that we're following the law as we should. So that subject was picked up by ICE, and from there, I don't know exactly what happened to him. That's their business. Later that year, there were 3 others. There was a female arrestee, and she was transferred to LA County Jail before any contact with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And then 2 others, one in September, one in October. And both of these arrestees, in compliance with the Trust Act, were held and detained, and they were not held any longer than they otherwise would have been with or without the detainer. When we received the detainer, we simply notified ICE that, yes, they are here. Here's the day that they're expected to be released, the day and time, and if they decide to show up and pick up that person, that's on them. So that was 2017. In early 2018, effective January 4th of 2018, Senate Bill 54 created the Values Act, which made some changes to the Trust Act. And what this essentially did is now required law enforcement, if we receive a detainer for anybody in our custody, if we're going to contact ICE and notify them that this subject is here and we think he's going to be released at this particular day and time, we have to do the same for every single arrestee across the board. So essentially, we have to make every arrest, the circumstances of the arrest, the expected date and time of release, public information to everybody. Well, the Hermosa Beach Police Department was not prepared or in agreement with making every arrest public information on the city website on a regular basis. It would require a lot of staff time and additional staff work that we weren't ready to do. So essentially in 2018, we did receive a total of 5 ICE detainers, and none of them were released to ICE because we didn't contact ICE to let them know, yes, the subject is here and they're expected to be released at a particular day and time. So that was the revisions of the Values Act in 2018, essentially limited some of our ability to work with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. These are the same demographic statistics for 2018 that I showed you in These are the demographic statistics for 2018. Now technically these aren't required by the Truth Act because none of these subjects were released to Immigration and Customs Enforcement. But for the purposes of today's community forum, we wanted to provide it just to show that we are still tracking everything in 2018, just as we were in 2017, and we will continue to do so. So that's the information that we wanted to share. It's something that's required by law because of the Truth Act to provide this information. We're to do it once every year, and this is the information we want to share. So that's all we have, and I'll answer any questions that anyone might have.
What's your opinion on the illegal alien who'll commit a heinous crime, a major crime, and they'll lessen it down to a misdemeanor? How do you feel about that?
I'm sorry, repeat the question.
In other words, they have illegal alien commits a crime, a major crime, and they'll lessen that to a misdemeanor.
In the court system, or? So let me try to answer your question. You bring up a good point, something I didn't really touch on because I'm trying to focus on the requirements of the Truth Act. So there are certain exceptions to us being able to hold an inmate longer than they ordinarily would be. So let's say we arrest somebody for an assault, a simple battery, nothing heinous, nothing violent, there's no weapons involved. But if this person has prior convictions for violent felonies, and we receive an ICE detainer, we can hold that person longer until ICE has a chance to talk to the person and investigate. So to answer your question, what is our opinion on anybody arrested, whether they're here legally or not, where they're arrested for a violent crime that's reduced to a misdemeanor or otherwise? It's part of our judicial system and our prosecutorial system. It's challenging, but we would like, law enforcement would like to see there to be adequate penalties for the crime, but we just understand that the court systems and the justice systems don't always have that ability. So don't necessarily agree with it, but we live and work within these parameters.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Regarding the 2000
17 transfer, you mentioned that man was arrested for vandalism and possession of a stolen firearm.
Yes, sir.
He bonded out. Any idea what the bond on that was?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. For vandalism, I would have to look up our bail schedule. I would guess it's somewhere around 15,000. And again, I'd have to check our bail schedule. So that's what the bail amount would be. So the bond would be 10% of that. So.
Well, as far as the stolen firearm, that seems like, well, we really don't want those people being released on low bond.
Correct. And I can assure you that for the Hermosa Beach Police Department, if there's anybody who poses a danger to the community, if we can enhance bail and increase that bail to hold them longer to make sure they do go see a judge, we will do so.
But you also mentioned that same individual, you found out later that he had more serious crimes in his past. Any way to get all that information on board just for the next time? When you do get hold of someone like that?
Yeah, let me correct myself. So when someone is arrested and booked,
right,
their arrest history information, we get that almost right away. It might take 15, 20 minutes,
right,
maybe an hour. But that doesn't prevent them from being able to bail or bond out. So even if
you can't
they
enhance it on previous.
Correct. Well, and sometimes there is a bail enhancement. In this case, there were none. Because being arrested and charged previously, in this one case, the gentleman had a previous charge for attempt murder,
Right.
wasn't convicted.
Right.
So it's not something that we could do.
You can't really enhance.
Oh, that makes sense.
Correct.
Well, then, when you go to the 2018 stats, there was no holds. And is that just because now the state has interfered with your way of doing business so terribly that you actually, your hands are tied, you can't actually get a hold of ICE to hold these people? I mean, you didn't mention what any of these crimes were for these 6 people in 2018. Were there any you think that you deem necessary to hold just because of they were a dangerous individual, and were they run-of-the-mill crimes, or were they actually?
Of these 5, there's none that were violent felonies,
Right.
that were something that would require us to try to take a deep dive and really look at their criminal history. But to answer part of your question is, had the Values Act not changed the limitations on law enforcement, I believe we would have contacted ICE on some of these. And if they happened to arrive at our facility before these individuals were released and take federal custody of them for immigration laws, that would have been on them and their choice. But to be in compliance with the Values Act, we can no longer contact ICE on these, forgive the term, run-of-the-mill arrests.
Sure. Well, is there any way the citizenry can assist you in taking a stronger position with these people that should be helped rights? Is there anything we can do? Can we contact our assemblyman, the congressman? Do you have any input what might help us to help you to do your job? Because, you know, we complain to you when criminals are running amok. So, I mean, you're the catch-all for all the complaints.
Yes, sir. You said it. I could really just ask the community and the public to talk to their elected officials and the legislation. We're bound by these laws. We're going to comply with these laws. We don't always agree with the laws, but we're going to comply with them.
Okay, well, we support you 100%, so we'll do some letter writing, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. So I came a little late. I have a couple questions.
There's some handouts too. Please make sure you grab one.
Oh, those are the remainders right there?
Yes, sir.
Oh, thank you. Okay. He's giving me his if you want to give him mine. So I see the race. Do you have the nationality on these 5 that were arrested in your hold? Because I see the racial status.
Not anything more than that. So it's really just based on the codes that we would use for their general race. I don't have anything more specific as far as country of origin. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
I don't have that.
Okay, I think it's just, I think it's worth pointing out, because a lot of people make this argument that illegals are only Hispanic, and I could see one of them is white. So, and my stance is, if you're here illegally, you need to go. I don't care what your skin color is. So I just think that's kind of interesting. That should be pointed out. And if so that's the first thing. The second thing, no, I mean, this is the meeting, when did the city council direct to have a meeting at a certain day in the year? Is that how this works, or do you as the police department decided to have this update?
This was decided by the police department.
Okay, so they initiated it.
Yes.
Okay, because it's interesting, I live in the city of Torrance, and the truth, this is the Truth Act, it came into law.
This is the Truth Act. The Values Act made the change of what contact we can have with ICE, but it is the Truth Act that mandated if we give ICE access to anybody in our custody, whether they're a prisoner or just a temporary detainee, we have to report on that in the following calendar year. So technically all of the data in 2018, because none of them were given access to ICE, technically we don't need to report on that, but for the purpose of today, we're not hiding anything, so we shared it. It was those 4 in 2017 that we're here to report on.
Okay, got it. And I just think, to me, it's like, and Torrance hasn't done this yet. To the list of my laws, they haven't had a public forum like this, so I have to talk to my city about this. Okay.
So, in 2017, you honored all your ICE detainers, and after the SB 54, the sanctuary state law, in 2018, you honored no ICE detainer requests. Is that how I'm reading the stats here?
We did not contact ICE in any of the 5 in 2018. We did not contact ICE because the law required if we did so, we would have to make the same information available, publicly available, of every arrestee, whether they had an ICE detainer or not. The staff time and workload that would be required to create a mechanism to post every single arrest that we make, and there's, you know, half a dozen a week for Hermosa Beach, and we're a small city, we'd have to do that for every single arrestee. So it basically made it to where you can either double or triple your workload for our jail staff, or just not contact ICE. And for the purpose of 5 detainers for the year, it was not worth it to the police department to make that dramatic change.
And you said you don't know the specific crimes of each of the
Not off the top of my head.
ones
I mean, we do have that information. I don't have that
that were
for the
released
purpose of
in
today.
2018. Because I find it very disturbing to see the police department honoring the ICE detainers in 2017 and 2018 after a lawless law was enacted. They were all set back into our community. How do we know? Are you able to keep track if they've gone forward and broken more laws? Or what were their age groups? Do you know their?
That, again, I don't have that for today. We have that information, I just don't have it for the purposes of today's.
Can she file a FOIA to get it?
Sure.
Okay.
And, you know, I'm going to say, I think the public release date, I think it rises to the occasion. You're saying it's a lot of work. LA County, surprisingly enough, Sheriff Villanueva is going to, after Sheriff McDonald made release dates public after the SB 54 was passed, we were at a meeting this week, and Sheriff Villanueva is going to keep that in place, where the release dates are public. I think I would say it's worth it, so that ICE, because when we have this incredibly lawless law, if you want to call it that, SB 54, I think our counties and our cities should take whatever effort they can to get the information to ICE. So.
And I appreciate that. Part of today's meeting, and this is even written in the language of the Truth Act, is to receive and consider public comment. I will take that public comment as part of the command staff here at the police department back to my chief, and we'll discuss it.
Thank you.
And so now you're
Take a vote.
You're part of a union, right? The Hermosa Beach Police Officers Association. Is there
Yes.
some kind of an agency like that? Now, does the agency have the power to comment or lobby for certain laws? I mean, like you could to speak to the assemblyman on laws, issues.
That would be the department head, the chief of police. Would
Okay,
be
that's
the-
his goal. Well, I want to be part of this. I think that my assemblyman, our assemblyman, you know, Al Maritsucci, he needs to get an earful from every police department, because, you know, we're seeing this like politicization of public safety here.
Yeah.
And this is really unacceptable. I mean, how many police officers, how many police deputies they already put their lives on the line every damn day. And now we're making it harder for them to save their own skin as well as the rest of the community. I mean, Ronell Singh, I think somebody has his image. Police officer who was, you know, gunned down by an illegal in Northern California. You know, people should count their blessings they live here, but nobody's immune to this stuff. I mean, the crap going on in other parts of the county could come here. It does come here. And I want to see this police department, along with the other police departments, start to push back at our representatives, Ben Allen as well as Al Maritsucci. They voted, well, Al did not vote for SB 54.
That's right.
So I think he was heeding your concerns. But I mean, there's an ongoing chipping away at your powers, and I think it's time for every association to start pushing back and say, look, we want to retain good people, and we're not going to be able to do that if their lives are at risk and they can't even work with their federal colleagues. I want to see Hermosa Beach be part of that effort and say, look, Al, Ben Allen voted for this and without even thinking twice. It's just, you know, they're not the ones putting themselves in the street. We live our everyday lives. We don't live behind big gated communities, you know. I want to see this police department really take this aggressive effort and push back and say, hey, you need to fix this or get rid of it, SB 54. This is just unconscionable.
Lieutenant?
Yes, sir.
Hi, so my name is Milton McKinnon. I'm the acting chief of police here at the Hermosa Beach Police Department.
Great.
So my comments with regards to what you just said is this, that there are associations for not only the police department, for the police officers, so that's usually the POAs, police officer associations, but there's associations for the chiefs of police.
Good.
And so the chiefs of police, they do advocate up in Sacramento with regards to bills and there are laws that are being considered. And so just know that that is already occurring.
What was the chiefs of police association, what was their status of SB 54?
So I will let you know that I've been the acting chief for 6 months, and so I don't know what their stance was officially. I suspect that they explained how this impacts communities, right? So the police department is well aware of, when I say police department, the chiefs and police departments are aware of the changes and the laws that have occurred, right? And so that can go back to a lot of changes in the laws that have occurred in the last 10 years, which have impacted communities, right? But as the lieutenant had mentioned, those laws are enacted, people vote on those laws, and we have to follow those laws. And so,
Okay, actually, no.
well, hold on just a second.
Well, okay. All right.
You said a lot of things, let me just finish.
All right.
So, we are complying with the law that has been put out. Now, I understand that there are a number of people who believe that some of the laws in place might be unlawful. That is not for us, or for me as the chief of police here, to decide that we're unilaterally not going to follow that and to direct my officer otherwise. So I agree with you that the police departments need to represent themselves and what they think is best for the safety of a community, and we do that within the confines and our ability to do that. So that is occurring. Can it be done better? Probably.
And this is where I'm going to respond. Okay, I would urge you, even if it's an interim position, if they choose not to keep you as the permanent chief, you need to take a stance against SB 54. We need to see that kind of leadership. This bill is destructive. It is putting everybody at risk. And I would like to amend this. You know, we want police officers to represent their interests, but that interest must include the public one. I would encourage you, I mean, I don't want to, I think that would be part of showing your leadership that they should consider keeping you permanent, that you would say,